There's a moment every trader faces that no one wants to talk about. It's not the first loss. That one still feels like a small mistake. It's not the second. You still tell yourself you can recover. It's the third, the fifth, the seventh. When the red numbers start to blur together and something inside you breaks. You stare at the screen and feel nothing. Not fear, not anger, just emptiness. The kind of silence that hums behind your ribs when you've run out of excuses. You've done everything right, followed the plan, read the books, watched the pros, and yet the market keeps pulling money and confidence out of you one tick at a time. It's strange how fast faith evaporates. 1 week ago, you were convinced you were close to mastery. Today, you're wondering if you ever understood anything at all. That's the breaking point. And it doesn't happen on the chart. It happens in your head. You start replaying every trade in your mind like a crime scene. Maybe I should have taken profit sooner. Maybe I shouldn't have entered at all. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Every maybe cuts deeper than the loss itself. The hardest part isn't losing money. It's losing certainty. The belief that your decisions mean something. Most traders think a losing streak destroys their account. What it really destroys is their identity. You stop feeling like a trader. You start feeling like an imposter pretending to be one. You open the platform again. The numbers flicker, and your body betrays you. Heart rate up, palms sweating, that electric twitch in your fingers. You want to click something, anything, just to feel in control again. That's how the spiral begins. Not from greed, but from the pain of helplessness. You tell yourself, I'll just make it back. But deep down, you're not trading to recover money. You're trading to recover dignity. And that's the most expensive trade you'll ever take. I remember my own breaking point like a scar. It was a Thursday afternoon. Chart looked perfect. Setup was clean. I followed every rule. And still, the market sliced through my stop like it wasn't even there. I froze, staring at the loss. Then came the anger. Then the urge. Within minutes, I opened another position. Bigger size, same direction. I told myself it was conviction. It was desperation wearing a mask. 10 minutes later, I was down again. Double. And when the platform finally froze from overtrading, I realized the truth. I wasn't fighting the market anymore. I was fighting the part of me that couldn't stand being wrong. That's what most traders miss. A losing streak doesn't kill your edge. It exposes your ego. It shows you every crack in your mindset, every fear you thought you'd buried. The fear of being average, the fear of wasting time, the fear that maybe, just maybe, success was never meant for you. Those thoughts don't come from the market. They come from the silence between trades. That's where the real battle happens. In the hours after a loss when your brain tries to rewrite the story to make the pain make sense. But sometimes there is no story. Sometimes the market just moves. And that's the hardest truth to accept. You can do everything right and still lose. When you're in a losing streak, time changes. Minutes feel like hours. Charts feel louder. Candles look personal. Every tick against you feels like judgment. Every green candle you missed feels like mockery. You start believing the market is watching you, waiting for your entry to flip direction. You laugh at yourself for thinking that, but it still feels true. That's the insanity of emotional trading. Knowing you're being irrational and doing it anyway. You say, I'll stop after this trade, but you never do. Because the streak isn't about money anymore. It's about identity. And identity fights harder than logic ever can. You begin to shrink your world around the chart. Sleep gets shorter. Meals get quicker. Friends ask how you're doing, and you say, busy. But really, you're just hiding. Because how do you explain to someone that your entire sense of worth now lives in a screen full of numbers? You don't. You just say, "The market's tough right now," when what you mean is, "I don't know who I am without this." That's when it happens. The quiet breaking, not the loud frustration, not the slammed mouse or the shouted curse, the quiet one. The moment you exhale, stare at the screen, and whisper, "Maybe I should quit." If you've ever said that to yourself, know this: you are closer to growth in that moment than you've ever been. Because the breaking point isn't the end. It's the first crack where truth can enter. Every trader who's ever made it, every so-called legend, has stood exactly where you are now. Mark Douglas, Paul Tudor Jones, Linda Raschke. They've all watched their strategies fail, their confidence collapse, their emotions take over. The difference isn't that they avoided the pain, it's that they learned to listen to it. They realized losing streaks aren't random punishments, they're feedback loops. Messages from the market showing you where you're still human, where you still crave control, where you still refuse uncertainty. The market is the most honest mirror you'll ever face. It reflects everything you bring to it, especially what you're trying to hide. When you start seeing that, the pain begins to shift. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's the moment the losing streak stops being a curse and starts becoming a teacher. But before that realization comes, there's the fall. The part where everything still hurts, where you doubt, cry, question, and crawl. That's where we are now. The edge between despair and discovery. And in the next chapter, we'll go deeper into why losing streaks spiral, how your brain traps you inside them, and the hidden mechanics of emotional pain that make good traders turn reckless. Because understanding the spiral is the first step to breaking it. Part 2. The spiral. The spiral doesn't begin with a bad trade. It begins with the thought that follows it. One loss whispers, "That's fine, I'll get it back." Two losses murmur, "Something's off, but I'll fix it." Three losses scream, "I need to win, now." That's when your brain stops trading the market and starts trading the need to feel okay again. It's not logic that drives the next click. It's emotion. Fear, shame, anger, confusion, all wrapped inside the illusion of control. Your body is tense, your breathing shallow, your mind spinning. You tell yourself you're being strategic, but deep down you're desperate. You're not looking for opportunity. You're looking for relief. That's the first rule of the spiral. You're not trading the chart anymore. You're trading your pain. Let's talk about what's really happening beneath the surface. Every time you lose, your brain feels pain, not metaphorical but neurological. The same parts of the brain that light up when you burn your skin or break a bone ignite when you take a loss. To your brain, losing money feels like physical injury. And because it hurts, your brain tries to fix it, fast. So it floods you with dopamine when you imagine winning it back. That little hit of hope feels like control returning. That's the trap. Because now, you're no longer trading probabilities. You're chasing chemicals. This is how even smart traders spiral. They confuse the relief of taking action with the reality of making progress. They say, "At least I'm doing something." But in trading, doing something is often the fastest way to make things worse. Every revenge trade, every oversized position, every ignored stop-loss, they're all just emotional anesthesia. You're trying to numb uncertainty. But the market doesn't heal pain. It amplifies it. The spiral feeds itself. A small loss becomes a big one. The big one turns into shame. Shame becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes obsession. You refresh charts you're not in anymore. You scroll through strategies at 2 a.m. You replay mistakes like a highlight reel of failure. You start living in two realities, the one on the screen and the one in your head. The story of what should have been. That story is poison. Here's the irony. Your brain doesn't crave money during a losing streak. It craves certainty. But the market never gives certainty. So the harder you chase it, the deeper you fall. You increase your lot size to make it back faster. You ignore risk because you just need one good trade. You stop journaling because you already know what you did wrong. That's not confidence. That's chaos disguised as action. And chaos feels intoxicating. For a moment, you feel alive again, powerful, defiant, fueled by emotion. The adrenaline makes you believe you're in control. Then the screen flashes red again, and suddenly that illusion shatters, leaving you emptier than before. The silence after a revenge trade loss is unlike any other. It's not the silence of peace. It's the silence of realization. The moment when you finally admit to yourself that you're the problem. Every trader hits that wall. The great ones just hit it fewer times, because they learn faster what it means. They understand that a losing streak isn't a pattern of bad trades. It's a pattern of emotional reactions. It's not the strategy breaking. It's the state of mind behind it. When you trade from fear, your edge disappears because your perception collapses. You stop seeing probabilities. You start seeing threats. Here's a truth most people never tell you. You can't see the market clearly when you're scared. Your brain literally rewires perception under stress. Loss triggers cortisol. Cortisol narrows focus. You miss context. You misread signals. You overreact. You make faster decisions, not smarter ones. In survival mode, you're not a trader. You're a gambler trying to escape danger. And the danger isn't on the chart. It's in your head. You think you're fighting the market. You're actually fighting your biology. That's why experience matters. Not because veterans know better setups, but because they've learned to manage this chemistry. They've seen this storm before and recognized it for what it is. A biochemical illusion of urgency. They know not to act when it hits. They wait for the wave to pass. And that waiting, that calm, is what separates survival from self-destruction. But if you're new, you don't know that yet. You think every feeling demands action. You confuse anxiety with intuition. And because the brain rewards doing, you keep clicking. Every action feels like control until it costs you again. And when it does, your self-talk turns darker. I'm so stupid. I knew it was going to happen. Why can't I just stop? You spiral further, not because of the market, but because of how you talk to yourself afterward. You start attaching identity to performance. And that's when things get dangerous. When you think, I lost money, it hurts. When you think, I am a loser, it destroys you. The first is feedback. The second is identity. That's why most traders never recover from a long losing streak. They stop separating what happened from who they are. You need to remember this. Losses don't define you. Your reaction to them does. Here's the brutal truth. You can't stop a losing streak by force. You can only outlast it by clarity. And clarity comes from one thing: acceptance. That doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping back far enough to see the full picture again. Because when you're in the spiral, your entire vision shrinks to one goal: get it back. And that tunnel vision blinds you to everything else: your process, your logic, your life. The pros don't escape losing streaks faster because they're smarter. They escape faster because they don't panic when it starts. They treat it like weather. Storm today, sun tomorrow. Neither defines the season. When you understand that, your relationship with loss changes completely. A red day isn't failure, it's feedback. A losing streak isn't collapse, it's calibration. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intellectually. You stop defending your ego and start protecting your process. That shift doesn't just save accounts, it saves traders. But to reach that level of peace, you have to pass through the spiral first. You have to feel it, the confusion, the shame, the impulse. Because that's how awareness is born. Pain is the teacher that forces presence, and presence is where growth begins. You can't escape what you don't understand, so we need to understand it. Every layer, every trigger, every pattern. That's what comes next. Because if part 2 was about how you fall, then part 3 is about how you rise. How the great traders, the ones who've been broken and rebuilt, turn a losing streak into a turning point. And trust me, it's not motivation. It's transformation. Part 3. The shift. The shift doesn't come with fireworks. There's no triumphant moment. No one claps. No notification pings to tell you you've changed. It begins quietly, like a breath after a storm. You sit there, surrounded by charts, the same screens that have punished you for weeks. But something's different. You don't feel the urge to click. You don't feel the panic. You just watch. That's where it starts. The first flicker of awareness after chaos. Every trader has to break before they awaken. You can't see truth through adrenaline. You can't understand discipline while you're still addicted to urgency. You only start seeing clearly when you've lost enough to silence your ego. When the market finally humbles you, it hands you something no strategy can teach: perspective. And with that, everything begins to shift. You start asking new questions, not, how do I win more, but why do I need to win right now? Not, what strategy will fix this, but what state of mind keeps breaking it? For the first time, you realize it's not the market that's inconsistent, it's you. The chart is neutral, but your emotions aren't. Every losing streak was never about bad luck. It was about bad reactions. You weren't punished by the market. You were punished by impatience. That realization stings at first. It feels unfair. You want to blame something outside yourself, the news, the algorithm, the volatility. But deep down you know the truth. The same pattern that destroyed your account has been playing out in your life for years. You've always been chasing something: approval, progress, control, speed. The market just gave you a mirror. And for the first time, you have the courage to look into it. That's the shift. Seeing loss not as punishment, but as feedback. Seeing discomfort not as failure, but as growth in progress. You start realizing that pain isn't the enemy, it's the messenger. And what it's been trying to tell you is simple. Slow down. Observe. Stop forcing what's not ready. When you finally listen, trading transforms from chaos into clarity. Most traders think transformation means more knowledge, more books, more setups, more analysis. But real transformation begins when you start subtracting. You remove noise. You remove impulsive trades. You remove the obsession to always be in the market. You remove the need to prove anything. You start building discipline not by addition, but by elimination. That's the art of mastery. Simplicity through awareness. You start to notice the subtle things you never did before. How your body tenses right before clicking. How your breathing changes when you're in drawdown. How your thoughts race after a small win. You realize that your physiology was trading long before your fingers did. That your body shows you the truth before your mind admits it. So instead of fighting emotion, you begin observing it. Instead of denying fear, you acknowledge it. Instead of pretending you're in control, you accept uncertainty as part of the game. That's how emotional intelligence starts to form. Not by suppressing, but by seeing. This is when trading becomes something else. It stops being a contest. It becomes a mirror of your consciousness. The same setup that once triggered fear now feels like a test of presence. The same red candle that once caused panic now feels like data. The same loss that once shattered confidence now feels like tuition. Every event becomes neutral. Only your response gives it meaning. That's emotional mastery. Responding from awareness, not reacting from pain. One day, during a normal session, you'll notice something strange. You'll take a loss, and it won't hurt. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you understand it. You'll close the trade, stretch your shoulders, sip your coffee, and move on. No emotional spike, no self-blame, no revenge. Just flow. That's when you know the shift has happened. When the market stops controlling your state, and your mind starts controlling your behavior. That's the invisible line that separates amateurs from professionals. Professionals lose too, but they don't lose themselves when they do. They've accepted that losing is part of winning. They don't fight it, they integrate it. You can see it in their composure. No panic, no rush, no despair. Just presence. Because they understand something most traders never do. The outcome of one trade means nothing. The outcome of your mindset means everything. The shift happens when you stop asking the market to validate you. When you stop trading to feel alive and start trading because you already are. When you stop measuring progress in dollars and start measuring it in discipline. That's the secret no one tells you. Consistency doesn't come from better entries. It comes from better energy. The energy of patience. The energy of surrender. The energy of quiet confidence. You start to build rituals that protect your clarity. You set limits, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. You take breaks, not because you're tired, but because you understand energy cycle. You walk away from the chart, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. About yourself. Your trading journal becomes less about numbers, more about awareness. You write things like, felt anxious before entry, waited anyway. Lost small today, but stayed calm. Didn't trade. Best decision of the day. That's progress. Invisible to most, but transformational inside. Then, something magical happens. You start seeing opportunities more clearly. Not because the market changed, but because you did. Your mind is quieter, your focus sharper, your reactions slower. You're not hunting trades. Trades start appearing. That's what happens when emotion gets out of the way. Perception expands. You start to sense the rhythm of the market instead of fighting it. You start moving with it. You realize that flow is not luck. It's alignment. And then, without even realizing it, your losing streak ends. Not because you fixed anything, but because you stopped breaking yourself over what couldn't be controlled. The market didn't change. Your relationship to it did. Loss stopped being personal. Trading stopped being emotional. And the streak that once defined your downfall became your initiation. You've finally crossed over. From the trader who needs wins to feel whole, to the trader who's whole, regardless of wins. There's a quote that says, "Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn." But the truth is deeper. Every loss is a win, just disguised as feedback. Every drawdown is a reset, if you let it be. The only time you truly lose is when you refuse to learn. Now you understand why professional traders never fear drawdowns. They expect them. They prepare for them. They respect them. Because they know that consistency isn't built in winning streaks. It's built in how you handle losing ones. That's the paradox of mastery. The greatest growth happens in the darkest moments. By now, you've learned that a losing streak doesn't break you. It reveals you. It shows you your blind spots, your biases, your emotional thresholds. And once you see them, you're no longer a victim of them. That's freedom. That's growth. That's the shift. But this story isn't over yet, because understanding isn't enough. Awareness is only the beginning. The test comes in repetition. To truly turn a losing streak into a turning point, you must learn to live this mindset every single day.
Part 4. The Rise. Recovery never begins with a trade. It begins with a choice, a quiet decision made when no one's watching. The decision to start again, not from where you left off, but from who you've become. That's what rising from a losing streak really means. It's not about the next winning trade. It's about the next honest moment with yourself. After the storm, the market looks the same. Same charts, same prices, same flicker of green and red. But you're not the same anymore. You've seen what happens when you lose control. You've felt what happens when emotion takes over. And now, for the first time, you're not afraid to feel it again. Because you understand that emotion isn't your enemy. It's your compass. It shows you where you still have work to do. The rise always begins small. A quiet morning with no trades. A patient wait for the right setup. A decision to close early because you respected your stop. You might not even notice it at first, the subtle shift from chaos to calm. But one day, you'll look back and realize that every small act of discipline was building something invisible. A new identity. Discipline is not about control. It's about respect. Respect for your process. Respect for your capital. Respect for your future self. When you start respecting your craft, your entire approach changes. You no longer chase trades. You let them come to you. You no longer force outcomes. You let probabilities play their role. You no longer demand instant success. You build consistent execution. That's how you rise, through quiet, deliberate repetition. It doesn't happen in one moment of motivation. It happens in thousands of small decisions you make when no one's watching. When you choose to journal instead of scroll. When you review your trades instead of blaming the market. When you walk away from the chart because you know you're tired. Those aren't small moments. They're the bricks of your foundation.
They're what separate the emotional trader from the professional. You begin to see loss differently now. Each one feels less like a wound and more like a warning light, a signal to check alignment. Were you focused? Were you patient? Were you following the plan? When the answer is yes, you move on easily. When the answer is no, you correct without shame. That's maturity, not perfection, but presence. There's something profound about building discipline after breaking down. It's like learning to walk again. Shaky at first, but stronger each step. And the best part? You no longer fear falling. You've already fallen before. And you realized the ground wasn't the end. It was a mirror. The fall taught you balance. The losses taught you awareness. The pain taught you patience. Now, you walk differently. Not faster, but steadier. When you trade again after a losing streak, your motives shift. You no longer trade to get it back. You trade to see clearly. You trade to test your calm. You trade to express discipline. The profit still matters, but it's not the measure anymore. The measure is how you behaved while earning or losing it. That's the new scorecard of a professional trader. Not P&L, but psychological integrity. You start to realize that true success in trading isn't about financial freedom. It's about emotional freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from greed. Freedom from the compulsive need to always be right. That's the kind of wealth no one can take from you. Because once you have control over your mind, you can rebuild anything. I remember talking to a veteran trader once, 30 years in the game. He told me, "You don't really understand trading until you've lost everything, and kept your discipline anyway." At first, I thought that sounded dramatic. Now, I understand. What he meant was, the real mastery is not never losing, it's never breaking. To stay centered when everything around you is shaking, that's what makes you untouchable. When you rebuild after loss, you start designing your process differently. You simplify. You remove noise. You focus on what you can control, your preparation, your risk, your reaction. You begin every morning not with goals, but with grounding. You breathe. You journal. You remind yourself, my job isn't to win every trade. My job is to execute my edge without emotion. And strangely, that mindset brings more wins than any strategy ever could. Let's talk about the science for a moment. When you rebuild from loss, your brain rewires itself. Neurons that once linked stress with trading start linking calm with trading instead. You stop releasing cortisol at every candle tick. You start releasing dopamine for patience, not for risk. You're literally teaching your brain a new relationship with the market. And like all habits, it compounds quietly, until one day, you don't recognize the person you used to be, the one who panicked, forced trades, chased losses. You've evolved. Here's something you realize in the rise. Trading doesn't require emotional perfection. It requires emotional recovery. Every trader feels fear. Every trader feels frustration. But not every trader knows how to reset. The pros don't avoid emotion. They know how to regulate it, how to breathe through it, how to return to equilibrium after the spike. That's what keeps them alive when others burn out. When you rebuild with awareness, the process starts to feel peaceful. You still lose, but the losses no longer take pieces of you. You still win, but the wins no longer make you reckless.
You trade, but you don't need trading to define you anymore. That's when it stops being work. It becomes craft. And craft, unlike work, is built on love. You start to enjoy the process again. The quiet mornings, the setup analysis, the journaling. Not because of profit, but because of peace. That's when you know the losing streak has become your teacher. You begin sharing lessons with others, not out of pride, but gratitude. You start telling new traders the truth, that losses aren't the opposite of success, they're the foundation of it. You tell them that pain is data, that confusion is feedback, that doubt is the start of self-awareness. You remind them, and yourself, that growth never feels like growth while it's happening. It feels like chaos first. The rise isn't glamorous. It's not the big comeback. It's the quiet confidence that builds in the background. The confidence that says, I can handle whatever comes next. Because you've faced the worst. Not in the market, but in yourself, and survived it. That's the real turning point. Not going from red to green, but from reactive to resilient. The beauty of the rise is that it never really ends. You keep evolving. You keep learning. You keep discovering new layers of discipline and patience. And each time you stumble, you recover faster. Each time you lose, you learn deeper. Each time you face fear, you meet it with awareness instead of resistance. That's what mastery looks like. Not the absence of failure, but the presence of recovery. When you zoom out, you realize something profound. The losing streak that almost broke you wasn't a detour. It was the main road. It wasn't an interruption to your journey. It was the journey. Every great trader you admire has walked that same path. The one that begins with confidence, collapses into chaos, and rises again into wisdom. You were never behind. You were being refined. So now, as you look back on your losses, don't curse them. Thank them. They were the teachers you didn't know you needed. They stripped away illusion, exposed ego, and rebuilt you with humility and clarity. Without them, you would have stayed stuck in the fantasy of control. With them, you've learned the truth. Control isn't power. Acceptance is. So what's next? You keep showing up. You keep practicing presence. You keep letting consistency shape you. You no longer rush your progress. You no longer fight your emotions. You no longer need the market to prove your worth. You've turned a losing streak into a turning point, and a turning point into transformation. From now on, when you sit in front of your charts, you'll feel something different. Not fear, not greed, but quiet gratitude. Because you finally understand that the market doesn't owe you anything, but it will always offer you one thing: truth. And if you're willing to listen, that truth will make you not just a better trader, but a better human. That's the rise. That's the freedom. That's the mindset that turns loss into legacy.